Alrighty everyone, welcome back. We are now getting closer to the end of September of 2023, and given that Bob Iger and the Disney Board of Directors, they've really been involved in a constant shakeup over various things revolving around Disney, such as their cost containment plan, their budgeting limitations to a lot of these upcoming movies and TV shows, and a whole lot more that's really being discussed back and forth between Iger and the board to really regulate things moving onwards. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into what's going on with Snow White as a brand for Disney and why it's a disastrous series of events happening behind closed doors. Now, we know that Bob Iger is doing everything that he can to stabilize Snow White 2024, starring Rachel Zegler and Gadot. Alright, we know that this movie, directed by Mark Webb, is and always will be a box office disaster. Alright, before it even drops in theaters, we already know it is and will be, and this is all, of course, rooted back to the test screenings that have failed, as well as Disney having pretty much low confidence in the production of this movie, as well as how they're going to promote it. Now, this is where things get even worse, and we talked about this lightly a couple of weeks ago that are now finalized, and there's a lot more that went into this development involving Disney and really their plan to remaking Snow White itself as a brand. So let's get into all of this now, shall we? Now, given that Snow White 24 is going through major damage control by Disney, one significant development has to do with Disney's plan to remake Snow White in a shocking turn of events as they brace themselves for the backlash for Snow White 24. A crucial piece of this development has to do with Disney's current plans to remake Snow White. A specific agreement was recently made between Iger and the board to pursue yet another Snow White movie that will be a second attempt at the story after canceling the Snow White sequel to the 24 film that was going to star Rachel Zegler. In a desperate move by Disney, they are now looking to focusing on a Snow White iteration that will focus more closely to the source material. However, at the same exact time, will double down on their DEI agenda all around to provide a different take on the iconic character. This all comes as a result of their Snow White universe failing, and for multiple reasons and factors, and that Disney is already in the process of rebooting Snow White to wipe the memory of a potential box office failure on a grand record for Disney. They are reportedly doing the same for the Maleficent movies with a new Sleeping Beauty film that's going to remake or reboot those two films, as well as for Cinderella 2015 getting a reboot by Disney. Now guys, let me just stop here for 1 second, alright? Because there's more to talk about in just one bit. The thing about this that I think is a massive mistake on Disney's end is that this makes them look very cowardly. The fact that they are embracing all of these different reboots / remakes of what's already established or what's already in the works, it goes to show you that this is nothing more than an attempt to kind of overshine a massive failure on their hands and to make something more forgotten. When in reality, all they really have to do to really kind of clean the slate and, save their image is by backgirling Snow White 2024 and starting fresh. Why release such a disastrous film and then embrace yet another Snow White movie not connected to this one is beyond me, and it makes absolutely no sense, but this is a thing that's going on over at Disney right now, and Iger will be touching on this next year about all of their upcoming reboots of already established live-action iterations of past animated counterparts. That's going to be a thing. We already know that they have plans to reboot, I believe it's the 2016 or 17 Beauty and the Beast as well, to kind of give us a refresh on that movie. So Disney's doubling down from what it seems with their animated classics getting transferred over into live action in different ways, and a lot of this is driven by the board, but we also have to remember who's funding Disney. Two people, or two groups I should say, two top shareholders known as BlackRock and Vanguard. I can't stress this enough, but these are the types of people funding this nonsense, that believe in this nonsense, and are pushing Disney to really push this narrative. And it's the leading reason why Disney, I feel, is so corrupted in many different ways, but we'll get into that a little bit later. This is where matters get even worse. Now, specifically, as of now, the Rachel Zegler Snow White film will be a one-off movie with no sequel intended as originally planned. The plan for this new reboot is to also make it into a lighter and less gritty story/tale, unlike the 2024 film, which holds elements of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, as well as Robin Hood within it. This decision was also made after they decided to not recast Rachel Zegler for a direct sequel, and were left with no further options besides the one to continue making Snow White films. Disney's plan is to eventually create multiple iterations of many iconic Disney characters down the road to provide fans a diverse view and endless source material of the characters in different ways. Disney is, of course, planning to look for writers for this Snow White reboot once the strikes are over to get things started. Now, again, I can't stress this enough, but we know that Disney is getting desperate at this point. From what it sounds like, they can't create anything new. So hey, you know, why not just let's remake what's already made or what's being made, and let's give them a different version of that. That sounds like what they're doing. And basically what it turns out as is it's almost like they're embracing just remaking the remakes to kind of pump out as many alterations of these iconic characters like Snow White, Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Sword in the Stone, you name it. We know that Lilo and Stitch is kind of in a stagnant mode right now. They're not quite sure how to move forward with production, separate from the strikes that are going on, so they're still trying to figure that out. But we know that there's a lot of things also going on with Moana and other movies like Hercules that's going to divert from the whole demigod storyline. That's one major discussion that they're having right now, which I think is utterly ridiculous. So again, I mean, this just goes to show you how out of touch with reality Disney really has become over the years. It's just crazy. I would have never thought in a million years that we would be standing here today, that Disney's overall plan for a decade's worth of failures, from what it sounds like to me at least. You know, you got the Pirates reboot, up and coming, that's not going to be just one film, it's going to be a multi-film franchise. You've got, you know, all the other live action remakes that I just talked about, and now they're embracing a remake of Snow White again, to reboot what's already being established in the 2024 film. It's just crazy, and it just goes to show you that they don't care about the core audience, they don't care about their source material that made Disney, you know, so successful, and how they were brought on their feet with those animated classics. I mean, look, if it weren't for those animated classics, Disney would not be who they are, or I shouldn't say today, but who they were 10 years ago, right? They wouldn't be where they were back then, and that's the problem. They don't realize where they started, they don't realize where the roots of their success were with Walt himself. You know, I can only imagine what Walt would be thinking right now about Bob Iger running the show, let alone Bob Chapek back in, you know, the Chapek era. But anyway, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.